Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And as I promised during my live stream, I was going to spam y'all with videos and specifically butterfly themed ones because I had many ideas before I did my live stream on Sunday. And here's one of the other ones in this video. So I'm going to do some very, very simple watercoloring again. This time on backgrounds. I'm going to use an embossing folder. We're going to do black butterflies. Who'd have thunk? And yeah, how to get a rainbow of colors with only 3 inks, which that I've shown in many times in many videos in the past. It's really, really fun. And as always, everything I used will be listed and linked in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links and then end up placing an order, I get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. That is what helps pay the bills, keeps the lights on, enables me to keep bringing out content. And yeah, let's get into making these cards. So the first thing that I am going to do is I am going to emboss a panel of watercolor paper. And I am using just thin, cheap watercolor paper. And I'm using this Hopping Hexagons 3D embossing folder from Simon Says Stamp. I've used this one, I think, a couple times now. And any sort of geometric pattern will work. Really, it doesn't matter. But I wanted to use this one because I love me a good geometric pattern. And I decided to do this 2 ways. So I've embossed the watercolor paper. I sprayed it with water first, especially with patterns like this. Highly recommend softening the cardstock with some water. It just helps prevent cracking. If you find that regardless of what brand or anything that you're using, if your cardstock is cracking when it comes out of the embossing folder, add a little bit of water, like just lightly mist one side of it. That helps soften the paper fibers and you get a better impression without that cracking. And then I took a second panel of the same watercolor paper, and this one I didn't emboss yet. And I taped them both down to a hardboard. This just helps keep the paper from warping, like curling up, because I'm going to add a lot of water to this. So it just kind of keeps things a little flatter, makes life a little easier. And then for my watercoloring, I am using Pawsitively saturated ReInkers. Now, any water reactive ink will work for this. I've done this with Distress ReInkers, just Distress inks, Concord 9th, Altenew, fresh dye inks. Any of those will work, and the ReInkers will work. The thing to remember though with ReInkers is these are very concentrated, and their sole purpose is to re-ink your ink pads. Can you watercolor with them? Yes, I'm doing it right now. However, you need to make sure you're adding water. Like, if you want like super, super vibrant, just pick a super vibrant color. If you go straight in with just a reinker and not enough water, it will pretty much never dry, or it will take forever to dry, because you think of an ink pad, if you leave the lid off of it for a while, it doesn't dry. You know, heck, I've left lids off my ink pads for overnight, forgotten, and they're fine the next day. Don't recommend it, but it's happened. Like, they've got additives in them. These are not liquid watercolors. If you use just like straight up liquid watercolors, totally different thing. They don't have the additives in them because they're not meant for ink pads, if that makes sense. So I make that point because I've done it in the past where I wanted it super, super vibrant, and I was specifically using reinkers, and my background would not dry. Like, would not dry. I'm talking days later, and you could still get color, like just rubbing off the top of it. It's because it was a reinker. So I am mixing just 3 colors to get a rainbow. After I did that whole spiel, and I'm like, done these backgrounds. Anyway, I used specifically Sunbeam, Surf, and Peony inks. And if you think of like printer ink, you've got magenta, cyan, and yellow. Those 3 will make a rainbow. When you mix yellow and blue together, or yellow and, in this case, Sunbeam and Surf, you get green. When you mixed yellow and pink together, Sunbeam and Peony, you get orange. When you mix pink and cyan together, Peony and Surf, you get purple. So you can get a rainbow of colors from those 3. I put quite a bit. I just had squeezed the reinkers onto my palette, I put quite a bit on there. I could have gotten actually even more backgrounds than this. And then I'd sprayed the watercolor paper with water first. Just that also just helps the color move more and adds that water so that, you know, it thins everything out and it'll enable all of this to dry. And then I just used a big paintbrush and I have a jar of water off to the side. And as you saw, I just painted the colors. So the one background was embossed with that 3D embossing folder and the other one is just flat. And it's just interesting to see how they, like using the exact same things, the exact same technique, everything, how different of a look you can get. Neither is wrong. Neither is better than the other. It just depends. Because the one on the left was embossed with the 3D embossing folder, it picked up the color and the ink in a different way. Like those raised edges and some of it, even though it was like lightly sprayed, some of it's cracked a little bit. And it just picked up the color differently, which is fun. So once I had those completely dry, they could have been air dried, but I sped it up with my heat tool because I don't have patience and I don't have time. Once they were dry, I removed the tape. And then the other panel, I ran through my embossing folder afterwards. And you can just see how it's just a totally different look. So like I said, neither are wrong. Neither one is better. I encourage people to experiment. It's fun. In the end, I like both of them. Just the one on the left, I kind of like more in a sense. And yet, sometimes, depending on the pattern and the technique, it's kind of neat when you'll do a background, whether you ink blended or watercolored, whatever, and then you emboss it after. It can create such a different look because it kind of tricks the eye. Sometimes, like I'll see other makers' projects, and it's like, how on earth did they get the background to look like that? Like it just, my brain won't figure it out. And then I'll see how they made it, and it's like, oh, they created a background and then they embossed it afterwards, and it creates just different looks. So it's fun. It's fun. And it's also fun to muck around with colors and splatter, because of course I added splatter. So I put the backgrounds into my splat box. I used my white gouache first. I put that on my palette. I watered it down a bit, and then I used my fan brush and liberally splattered this onto these backgrounds. And then I put my black gouache on my palette, watered that down, and I'm going to pretty liberally splatter this as well. It's another thing I love to do. There's something about like specifically a rainbow color palette and then how black and white just pops with the rainbow colors. Love it. Love it. So after I had splattered both these backgrounds, I let everything dry. I immediately, I cleaned off my palette, cleaned off my brush, because especially, like I always say, that black gouache is insanely pigmented and it will stain everything. Everything, literally. So after I added all my splatter, I let these backgrounds completely dry, and then I trimmed them down with my paper trimmer because they were whatever size, originally like 4.5 by 6 inches roughly. So I trimmed these down to A2 sized panels, so 4.25 by 5.5 inches, just using my little guillotine trimmer here. And that always helps like clean everything up too, because once you remove the sort of jaggedy edges, etc., I love it. I love it. So I set those aside. And while that splatter been drying, I die cut Simon's black cardstock. And this is a like oldie but goodie favorite. This is the layered cosmic butterfly wafer die. Simon's got a few different ones. There was another one in the new release that I've used in a previous video. That one's currently out of stock. So I pulled this one out and I die cut it from black cardstock, which on camera doesn't look like a whole lot. Especially adding these detail bits. It's like on camera, it's like, why? You can't even see it, but you can in real life. And as always, there's a method to the madness. You could skip adding the detail bits, but again, in real life, you can see them. So I just adhered the butterfly pieces together. And for the next step, technically you could skip that and just have die cut like the detail bits from like a glitter cardstock. That would look really pretty too. I thought about that, like die cutting them from like black glitter cardstock. But I had my heart set on using stickles. So after I assembled my butterflies, this is Glisten stickles. I had added it to an order a couple months ago because I was like just curious, because especially stuff like this, when you see it online, like the online image, it's like, I wonder what it really looks like. So I ordered it and it's pretty. It's kind of How would I describe glisten? Think Ranger Liquid Platinum embossing powder in glitter form with like flecks of blue and green and like almost like rainbow colors. Really, that's the only way I can think to describe glisten. It's pretty. So I applied it very thinly to just those detail areas on the edges of the wings and to the body of all these butterflies. And I didn't apply it super thick so that it would dry a little bit faster. Depending on the type of cardstock you use, like this is Simon's, like I said, heavyweight black cardstock. So I could have added it even thicker and it wouldn't cause the cardstock to like curl or warp in any way. Not that that would be a bad thing, because when it comes to like critter wings, butterflies and dragonflies, things like that, if they happen to curl up a bit, it works in my opinion. But I applied those stickles and set all those to the side to dry. And then for my sentiments, I'm using the With Thanks set. And I stamped the You Are the Best onto a scrap of white cardstock. Had to flip it over and stamp it again because there was a little like fuzzy or something stuck to one of the letters. And I was like, when I first stamped it, I was like, that looks wrong. What is happening? And then I, removed the little chunk of whatever that was stuck to the stamp and then flipped over the cardstock, stamped it again with Nocturne ink. And then I die cut those with the Sentiment Label wafer dies that I have 2 sets of because I was sent one set originally whenever this was released, however many years ago. And I bought a second set because I use it so much. And then I set those aside. And on the inside of the card, I'm using the large thank you sentiment from that same stamp set. And this I've shown many times. I've done it in a whole bunch of different ways. But I'm just inking up the stamp with those same inks, but using the ink pads this time. So the Surf, Sunbeam, and Peony inks. And I'm just angling the ink pad. So I'm just using the very edge of it to ink it up. And then I took my blending brushes and I'm pressing those into the same colors. So the yellow and the yellow, etc., etc. And the blending brush just helps kind of soften the transition between the colors. I've also done it where I ink up the stamp with the blending brushes or with like pouncers, things like that. It just depends on the look you're going for. But that way I get basically a rainbow of colors. And if I'd worked a little harder, I could have made it like more of a true rainbow. But this is going on the inside. It's just kind of extra. And then this way I'm able to get the colors onto the inside as well with just a sentiment stamp. So after I did it the first time, I wiped the stamp clean so I could do it a second time and not get all those inks like stuck into my ink pad because, I'm not going to be able to line up the ink pad exactly the second time. So I did it the second time and stamped that onto, and this is the inside of my card base, which is a top folding A2 white note card. So 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. So I stamped that onto the insides of the cards. And then I took the sub sentiment, lined that up, and then I stamped that with the black ink. So once I got those stamped, that was the insides of the cards. And then the card front panels, I'm going to adhere with craft tacky glue. And this will completely cover the card base. So I got that into place, and then I just set my big acrylic block on top just to hold that down while I adhere the second one. And then once I've got the card fronts adhered, I can adhere those butterflies, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to adhere it with the craft tacky glue, and I only apply the glue like right in the center area of the butterflies so that the wings just kind of naturally pop up a little bit. So press that down, got that adhered into place, repeat on the second card front. And then for the little sentiment strip, I just took some little foam squares and cut them in half and then run those along the bottom and then just pop that into place onto the card front. And then rinse and repeat for the second one. So got the butterflies adhered into place, and then I'll pop the little sentiment strip into place with the little foam squares as well. And then once those are adhered, as my little final bit of embellishment, I used Simon's Black Pawsitively Dazzling Gems just to add that little extra bit of bling. So once I got, like I tend to do, the placement figured out on the first card, I just repeated on the second one. So got those into place, and then all I have to do is pick those up with my little embellishment wand, put down a dab of the craft tacky glue, press it into place, let the glue dry, and these cards are complete. So like I mentioned in the intro, I'll have links to all of the things in the description box below the video, so you can just expand that and check it out if you're interested. And there's my 2 backgrounds using 3 colors to make all the colors, you know? And then just 2 different looks, depending on whether you emboss before or after. So it's just fun. It's just fun. Let me know which one you prefer. Or if you like them both, or whatever. Whatever, you know? I appreciate the comments, like I always say, and it's true. The thumbs upping and the commenting, it really does help a lot. It just tells the robot overlords that you like what you see, you know, and then maybe YouTube will push out more of my content. You never know. So thank you all so much for hanging out with me, and I hope to see you all very soon in the next video. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't, I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!